Mark Vanderweide. I today work for a company called Bungii. Have been there for about 3.5 years. We're like Uber for big stuff. You need a couch moved. We have guys with pickup trucks who can do it.
How do you think about prioritization? Everybody's going to have a unique approach to it.
In my opinion, in the product space, if you're going to make the right decisions, you have to understand where real value is. And if you can't explain that value in 30 seconds, you don't understand it yet.
Where are the areas that you go, here's just consistently where people think they're doing good, or they think they're heading towards the right direction, or they're doing the right thing, but they just get it wrong?
3 popped in my head immediately. One is,
no, it's really good.
Those 3, I think, are so consistently seen, and everybody talks about these, and so having tactical ways to tackle them becomes the key because they're real.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm super excited to talk to you. Why don't you go ahead and do a quick introduction to yourself and kind of what you do every day?
For sure. Yeah. Glad to be here with you, George. Appreciate you having me. So yeah, Mark Vanderweide. I today work for a company called Bungii. Have been there for about 3.5 years. Local company, was started by a couple of great guys out of K-State, actually, while they were finishing up college, and moved into the Kansas City area. And Bungii we're a shared economy, final mile, big and bulky, on-demand delivery service. A lot of words. Shorter way to describe it is we're like Uber for big stuff. So we move with a shared economy of drivers, think guys with pickup trucks. We move the first and final mile or delivery. You need a couch moved. We have guys with pickup trucks who can do it. You're basically renting a service. That's kind of the high level of Bungii. So we'll talk more about Bungii later. Great company, have loved being there. So that's where I am now. I've been in the Kansas City area my whole life, lack a short stint after college. I went to K-State after college, was not quite ready to work. So I joined AmeriCorps, who I heard one of your guests recently also did AmeriCorps, which is kind of great. Isn't that funny?
Small world.
Small world. When I heard that, I was like, that's funny. I don't know if he wasn't ready to work either, but that was really my motivation. I did not want to sit behind a desk. So I was in the West Coast for a year doing short-term community service projects, reshaped my worldview a little bit in a good way. And then when I came back to Kansas City, I actually worked in the foster care system in Kansas City, Kansas for a year and a half or so. And then I got married and had to make money to support my family, bottom line, and work for Sprint. At the time was the biggest company in Kansas City. And I was in IT project management, really, is kind of where I got the start into the IT software world. And that was really my studies, and that was my major at K-State. So got my feet wet there, and then had the opportunity to move to Perceptive Software, which was a local company that, great company, was there about 8 years. And I joined them right as they were growing, huge growth, fun time to be there. And so I worked there, and I worked in their services, which was project management, but that's also where I made the switch into product.
Yeah.
And for me, I think the main motivation was at least it looked like that was kind of the hub of the business. And it was like, this seems like it'd be fun to be in the middle of everything, which, is appealing to some, is not appealing to others. But
Sure.
For me, my personality, my life stage, whatever, I was like, that seems like where I want to dig my heels in a little bit, is in this product management space. Wasn't super familiar with it, but got my feet wet there. The unique thing about Perceptive is while we were there, we were acquired by Lexmark. If you think the printer company out of Lexington, Kentucky, another great company, but they were, a little older school, hardware focused, bought us to grow their software arm, and then acquired 12 other companies after Perceptive. So it was
the M&A train. Yeah.
M&A train, man. And it had its ups and downs, of course. I think the thing that was great as I reflect back, I don't know that I knew it in the time, but looking back, was the exposure to being able to be in the middle of 13 companies really as a part of one was really great, and really opened my eyes to good, bad, and indifferent, right? About how things are run. And so anyway, sorry, let me finish.
No, it's great.
My history is going too long.
Real quick on Perceptive.
Yeah,
what's great about Perceptive in the Kansas City area, I would say they were one of the first organizations, especially the first organizations that were scaling, that really started to adopt product practice. Because Sprint really never took on product. That was, I mean, they had
Yep.
project managers, they had technical, they had IT, and they were huge. And even, and then I think that you saw Cerner here in town
Hmm.
start to also adopt some of those things and start to build a product practice. But Perceptives was pretty early in the game for the Midwest, for Kansas City. You know, that was definitely more popular on the coast from the tech startups. But I
Yeah.
think you were at the right place at the right time to be getting in on that early.
I think so. I feel really fortunate to be there, and absolutely, you're right. It exposed me to that the tension between, because we had a very strong engineering side. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant guys. You know, we started with patents that drove the company, but then to have product come in and really have a presence, and part of that was because of Scott Coons, the CEO, who's great, and he that balance and dichotomy between engineering and product. It it was close to uncomfortable, but it's the uncomfortable you have to grow in a good
It's
way.
needed. Yeah. Yeah.
So needed. And I know that's something, product folks, we talk about that a lot, but it was my first exposure to seeing what it's like to have strong, smart opinions on engineering and strong, smart opinions on a product and maybe other
Mhm.
parts of the organization. And they may not align. And then
Yeah.
what happens? And
Yeah.
it was it was a great learning experience for me to see how that's worked out. Sometimes cordially, sometimes banging the fist on the table, and that's okay. So,
Well, okay, so then you went through the transition to Lexmark, which was a big transition. Even Kansas City felt that, right? Because they both kind of hired up, and then it did, dial down pretty quickly, kind of
yep,
overnight.
it was
What
pretty quick.
were you a part of that transition as they dialed down, or were you out before that? I'm just kind of curious.
I exited as they dialed down, so I
Okay.
stayed with it. I think through all of the acquisitions.
Yep.
Um, but it was basically Perceptive was the first, and then we acquired. I think it was 12 other companies. I was with it through all of that, and I left shortly after the local leadership. So Scott and his team really, when they exited, the direction the new leadership was going was not aligned
Yeah.
to what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. So that was when I took my bow, which was about that same time. So through the
Yep.
growth, uh, really great learning there. But yeah, that's when I left, took another
And now
opportunity to get out of
Kiewit's
there.
taken over that
That
whole.
Q was taking that building, and I know that the sad thing, Jordan, I talk about, that Lenexa area is so cool that they built up
Yeah.
in Kansas City. We were the anchor tenant. There wasn't anything there
There
when
was
Perceptive was
nothing out there. It was a
there was
field.
nothing.
It was just
It
a
was a
giant
field,
field. Yeah. It's
and
super cool now.
for good reason. But we missed out on the rec center, the aquatic center, all the great
Yeah.
restaurants. Like it was just us and our dodgeball court at the time.
Yep. 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 So what was next? What came after the Lexmark?
Yeah, so okay, then I went to another local company called Ad Astra, and Ad Astra makes educational software
Yep.
for scheduling. Locally owned, great company, a little smaller. Enjoyed my time there, and so then I was leading the product team, and there was about six of us maybe in the product, so relatively small team, different space for me in higher education, but
Yeah.
got to learn a lot there and really cool space, and then I moved to Simpler, which Simpler
Yeah.
was private equity purchased a local company called Cactus. You might remember
Yep.
Cactus from,
Oh yeah. Right.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, a while back. So they're in healthcare credentialing, really, is the space there. And so totally different space, different customer base, different buyers. And similar to Perceptive, there it was private equity backed, but I think we had 9 acquisitions in the time I was at Simpler. So had another opportunity to live in that M&A train, and took a lot of what I learned from Perceptive and got to apply it there, leading the
Yeah.
product team there.
Yeah.
Uh, Ups and downs, learnings and failures, and but it was another great experience for sure to be in the healthcare space and with Simpler team. And then,
Okay. Yeah.
go
Keep
ahead,
going.
go ahead.
No, keep going. Keep
Well,
going. I have thoughts, but keep rolling.
right. To round it out, and I apologize. This journey took longer than I thought there, but so
Well,
then,
this is the thing with most people in product. The journey is what shapes you into the product person you are now.
mm,
So that's great.
mm, that's very true, isn't it? All from different backgrounds. But so I got a call from a guy named Ben Jackson while I was at Simpler. I was pretty happy at Simpler. We were growing, solid team. Didn't have much motivation to leave other than I was getting a little worn out from the acquisitions again. And Ben says, "Hey, I'm the CEO over at Bungii. Do you want to talk?" And I'm like, "I'm not really interested." And he's like, "Well, because Scott Coons said I should talk to you. I'm like, oh, well, name dropping the perceptive. They're like,
Yeah, come
all
on now.
right, fine, we'll get together. So I meet up with Ben and a few drinks, and like 3 hours later, I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm ready. This sounds great. Ben's a really dynamic, high integrity guy. I was really excited to join him and the team at Bungii. We were pretty much in startup mode at the time. They were,
Yeah.
I would say we were still startup. That was late 21. So coming out of COVID,
Yeah.
um, they were making a move. I'll talk about it. Basically, moving from customer or consumer focus to business focus, and recognize the need to hit the product a little heavier in terms of strategy. And so that's what they were looking for, somebody like me to come in and help them do that. And so that's what brought me over to Bungii, and it's been a great journey from there.
Okay, so let's recap a little bit, because what's amazing is going from, well, kind of basically almost the nonprofit world, right?
Yeah.
This
Yep.
kind of early stage, kind of altruistic work into telecom, into what ends up being kind of software development meets, well, a printer company,
Yep.
in the M&A, learning all the ins and outs of the pros and cons of M&A and private equity. That's a whole nother
Mm,
conversation we could have, because I think
hmm
so many product people are constantly navigating the challenges of private equity,
Oh, that's a
because
big one.
it's interesting to me. And well, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that, because
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's a topic that actually I hear more and more now, because private equity is kind of eating the world. But and then moving into um so from Lexmark, you moved into, did you go straight to Bungee? You didn't
Hi,
go to,
higher education. So
that
the
was
ad
it, the
asset
higher
higher. Yep.
education,
Higher
right?
ed. Yep.
And then into this last mile company.
hmm
And what's interesting is, like, none of those, you didn't follow an industry. You
Nope.
really followed a craft, right? Your craft, which
Yep.
was to say, I'm really love getting in the middle of it. So that's something that you talked about at the very early stage, right? Is
Yep.
that you liked kind of, not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to be in the middle of what is sometimes the mess, and is
hmm
oftentimes the having to wrap your brain around the context of what is everybody motivated by, what's in play, what's the context here. But ultimately, it sounds like that's where you kept finding
Mm.
yourselves. It's kind of in the middle of it.
Yep.
As
Yep.
as you as you moved through those, how did you, because coming in and out of new companies, or even as the M&As are happening, what was it like to kind of find the alignment between people, to
Mm.
find, to reach out and get in touch with someone and say, hey, I think you're the person I need to talk to, or maybe you're not, but either way,
Yeah.
how did you find being in the middle of it effective?
Mm. Gosh, if we were writing a conclusion of my product book, it would be the word alignment. I know it's a buzzword, but so
It's so
true.
important.
It's
Yeah.
what it's all about, right? Especially as we would go in, and as you said, like there's so many dynamics with private equity or with acquisition. So with Perceptive, we would go in, and we were the acquirer in that case, right? Under Lexmark, but Perceptive was kind of the anchor software, and so guards are up, right? Every time I go into one of those company, guards are up heavy, as they should be. We're buying their company. They're glad about that, but they're very worried about what's going to happen. And every time I went in, that what you hit on it right away. It's like, how do we find alignment? Where's the common ground? Where can we be friends? I'm not
I'm
here
not
to
here to
ruin your
threaten
company.
you.
I'm not here to right.
Yeah.
I only win if you win, and as cheesy as that sounds, that's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I mean, my approach, I think, kind of personally, kind of both, just because that's the way with product, is to first pause and try to understand their perspective, right? And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's absolutely
Good though.
true. You have to take a little bit of time. And one of our engineering leaders is really good about this. And although an engineering mind, he was like, let's just take him to dinner. Let's hang out, start there and get
A
to know him.
meal. I love
Uh,
that it's
you
a
know,
meal. Yeah.
yeah, break bread together. And
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
as cheesy and basic as it sounds, was absolutely critical. And but it was aimed at that. It's like finding alignment. Okay, like we're not going to agree on everything, but where are we the same? What are we doing that you like, and vice
Good.
versa? And let's find out where you're heading. That was always that, understanding what their roadmap is, where are you heading, and try to align, like as we get the conversation a little deeper. So first is relational, right? You have to build a little bit of trust. Again, I know those are buzzwords, but they're absolutely true. They're buzzwords for a reason.
Yeah.
And then it's, okay, now let's talk about where you want to go. What's your roadmap look like from a product perspective, a tech perspective, a company perspective? and where's the clear overlap already? Highlight
Mhm.
the areas that are already aligned, and let's hone in on those. Great. So at that point, I make it sound like it's easy. It was never easy, but
Oh yeah, human beings
that's
aren't
like
easy, and this is
human beings are
human
not
work,
easy. You got
right?
you got a lot of
Yeah,
emotions involved in this, and
yeah,
so it
yeah.
was never smooth. But that was, to answer your question, that was definitely the approach. Is like find that common ground first, then look at the future and the roadmap and where we aligned there, and
Hmm.
then from there, okay, great. Now let's debate more of the tactics. What's the short term look like? How are you doing things? Let's look at your processes, your people, your products,
Yep.
but not until you do those first two things.
I think that's super good, and I think it's missed by a lot of people because if most folks step in and they say, "Are you doing the ceremonies right?
Mm,
Are you doing the things that is like by the book, agile or whatever it
yep,
is, you know?" And then ultimately, are we delivering at velocity?
yep,
And then it's
yep.
like, okay, well, those are important. Yeah, we should be doing those. But you do realize these are not machines, right? These are
Right.
people. And oh, by the way, they're terrified they're going to either lose their job or they're not going to get credit for their work or everything that they spent the last X months, years working on is not valuable anymore. So it's like, why did they do it? So why keep going? And especially during M&A because everything's on the chopping block,
Yeah, yep.
which is scary.
Scary for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's part of the guards being up. You're very right though. Another overused saying I love to say is it doesn't matter how fast you go if you're not going in the right direction, right?
Yeah,
And
that's good.
again, overused, I get it, but it's so true because we fall victim so quickly into are we being efficient?
Yeah.
In particular in the software development world and product. Yeah, I always want it faster. I always want more. That's
Of course.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that will
Faster,
always be
better, cheaper,
true.
right?
And not to discount that because that's fair. But if we're not aimed in the right direction, it doesn't matter how efficient and fast we are.
Yeah.
And that's a
So
hard
I'm
thing to get
curious,
people to see, though.
yeah, as you've been in these different organizations, or even as these organizations have shaped and changed over time, what has been what has been some of the kind of whether it is this relational piece or whether it is something about the dynamics of a team or even the structure of the team, what have you found around the way that you've seen teams come together that's been really effective? What's been
Mm,
the way that you've seen kind of and you could anchor first with this is where it doesn't go well,
yeah.
but ultimately where do you see that the most effective teams, how are they working together? How are they set up? What are they doing? Um, that seems to be it's like that team just man, they deliver better.
Mm,
And consistently they deliver better.
yep. Yep. Man, that's a great question. That's gold there. I'll use an example of so Simpler was the healthcare company I was at for a few years, and we had we had a big project that had a lot of missteps going into it.
Mm,
And the biggest thing, and again, this is going to sound simple and basic, but we spent a lot of time resetting and rallying around the goal. And
yeah.
so everybody had a high level of frustration because we had those missteps, we had failed. That's a whole different conversation about why, but it was poor leadership, poor planning, poor everything.
Yeah.
But the fact was, in order to keep the company going, we basically had to have this huge new release, and it was just daunting and huge. And there was a lot of reasons it went well, but what we did is basically take 2 days to step back and redefine the goal. We took this huge hallway and turned it into like a card wall of okay, here's kind of the features we got to build. I bought a didgeridoo to play like the Australian instead of the gong. Every time we finish a feature, we blow the
That is the
didgeridoo.
first time a didgeridoo has been referenced on the podcast for sure. Yeah.
Oh, it's so great. I still have that in my house. It got
So
lost in
great.
COVID and I reclaimed it, but put some celebration around it. But the first big step was, especially because everybody was just feeling a little worn down, was hey, let's be clear about the vision. That we're not escaping this goal. This has to remain the goal.
Hmm.
Let's define it a little deeper, keep in everybody's face, celebrate the wins, and rally around this one specific thing. So, 100 little points to that answer, but to that question, which is
Yeah.
such a good one, George, such a
Who
good one.
was
Is how do you
involved in
do
that
that?
exercise? I'm kind of curious. What types of roles were in the room?
Yeah, so the way Simpler was organized, it was basically the product leadership and the engineering leadership were kind of guiding it. We
Yep.
had input. Our local sales lead was great, so we had input from sales, we had input from operations. part of that is because one thing I've learned is it's back to your alignment point, right? If you don't at least have directional alignment, they didn't need to be there for all of it, but I brought them in for at least the last part to make sure we're all
Yeah.
aligned on where we're
Yeah.
heading. Let's make sure directionally there's no discrepancy on what we're doing.
If you're not
Um,
aligned with stakeholders, then it's just a lost cause.
it's just delaying a big problem down the road. And so it was, 90% was like product and engineering leadership. And then,
Yeah.
and almost all the team, we would have all of the
Oh,
engineers, all
good.
the
Yeah.
product folks would be in there, and then we'd break out. Um, but I do think it's really important that the other leaders of the organization did have touch points into the process.
Let's take a break to tell you about our sponsor this week, Crema, a design and technology consultancy. At Crema, we know that navigating through periods of rapid change and scaling can be daunting. Broken systems, misaligned teams, delivery delays, and gaps in customer engagement are just some of the challenges that can arise when growing like this. That's where Crema steps in. Crema acts as a trusted partner, helping you overcome these hurdles on your journey to becoming a tech-enabled organization. Crema is excited to announce 3 new services designed to empower your product teams. You may have heard of the product triangle: design, product, and technology. Well, we're excited to help you navigate all 3. First is our UX audit. This isn't just a review, it's a deep dive into the user experience to uncover transformative insights that serve as a blueprint for greater success. Next is our team assessment. This service helps you identify the strengths and gaps in your product team, arming you with the knowledge to excel. And finally, a code quality assessment. It's essential to ensure that your technology is not just working, but thriving. Our experts will enhance your code base to improve performance, security, and scalability. Ready to get the most out of your existing product teams? Visit crema.us today and learn how Crema's new services can help you navigate your biggest challenges. Now back to the show. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so when you're working day to day, I'm kind of curious what your day looks like. In your position, in your moment, what does it look like when you get up in the morning? What's the first thing you start thinking about? Here's what's on my checklist. Is it a stand up? Is it a check-in? Is it I need to look at our roadmap? I need to check in velocity. I need to talk to leadership. What are some of the things that first come to your mind when you get up in the morning?
Yeah, great question. So a little bit of context, and I apologize if my answers are long-winded here, but
No, it's
I
perfect.
went from my previous few roles were mostly leading teams. So I had when I left Simpler, I had a large product team of product
Yeah.
managers, product leaders. When I went to Bungii, I was solo, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was and part of that was just like my life stage. Maybe my wife might say it was a midlife crisis. Maybe it was.
Hey, I'm in it right now. It's okay. We
But
can talk about that later.
different topic for different day. But it was a notable change for me to move from waking up thinking about how am I effectively leading my folks, my team to do the right
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
versus okay, I'm waking up and it's on me. Like every product
Mm.
decision now at the size company we were is I'm the product owner, product manager, director, everything, right? And so
Taking out the trash. Yeah.
yeah,
All of
that's
it.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I knew that, that was not like I didn't know, but it was a
Yeah.
switch for me. So just a little context to the answer. So today I go from direct client interaction. So we work with a lot of retailers is kind of where we focus now. And so um, I wake up and think about who are our most strategic clients and are we doing the right things with them, both in the short term and the long term.
Yeah.
Um, our development team, I wake up thinking, are they clear on what the priorities are? And one click down what the big features are that make up those priorities. That's where I focus. And then I think the next step is the team for us, our operations is mostly made up of like a support team, and then we call them supply, which is the drivers, so our shared economy drivers.
Oh,
Those are
yeah.
the
Sure.
two big branches of operations for Bungii. Um, so there's that, the sales team, finance team. Are we aligned on where we're going? I mean, I think if there's 3 things I wake up thinking about to your question, that's where it is. And then it gets anywhere from very technical conversations with engineers to strategic roadmap conversations with huge retailers. And, for now, I love it. It's fun to run that gamut. At some point, it might wear me out, but for now, I really enjoy it.
You still have the energy, the midlife crisis. You're still young enough that you can keep going. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, George, in 2 weeks, my youngest turns 13, which means I'll have 3 teenagers at home. So, like, even that level of crazy at work is really stable compared to my emotional home that I'm in. So,
You're preaching to the choir, my friend. I've got 18, 16, and 13. So I
oh my
totally know.
gosh,
Yeah.
we are almost exactly the same. In fact,
Yeah.
this summer, that's what I'll have. So we are very
It's
much in the same
amazing.
boat.
Okay. Well, we have lots more to talk about after we stop recording. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You mentioned priorities, and I think this is something that actually almost every product owner, manager, leader that I've talked to, this is something they know they're responsible for curating or managing or moving forward, but they all really struggle to figure out, how do you actually decide what's priority? And this is about being decisive, but also being inclusive, to understanding context, to understanding technical feasibility. How do you think about prioritization? It sounds like you spend a lot of time with the client, which
Yep.
helps with the
Yep.
user. Is that the only driver, or are there other pieces that you go, I know when I take this back to the team, how they'll respond when I say, hey, I really think we need to do, tell me a little bit about how you think about prioritization.
Gosh. Okay. I'm going to try to be succinct because that's such a great question. And in the product space, I'm not sure there's a more
There
important
is no
question, right?
right
Like,
answer, though.
no right
It's how do
answer.
you approach it? And I think
Yep.
this is everybody's going to have a unique approach to it.
Yep, for sure. And I think, again, just a touch of context, I've seen everything from it. When Perceptive was bought by Lexmark, they had a multi-month process of prioritizing, which went into, and understandably so, right? They're a multi-billion-dollar company, but it
Yeah.
was lots of decks and lots of presentations and lots of ROI calculations, which are really just closing your eyes and throwing darts at an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And and anybody that's been at a big company has seen something similar, right? There's
Yeah.
some
It's pomp
kind
and
of
circumstance
uh-huh,
to the T. Yeah. Totally.
uh-huh.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I've seen everything from there to when I started at Bungee, it was building that up from, I don't want to say nothing, but just, it was starting from scratch. And
Yeah.
so, and
Everything was
everything in
cut
between.
at the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so from a day to day, like the overall perspective is, in my opinion, in the product space, if you're going to make the right decisions, you one have to understand where real value is.
Mm.
Um, that's a key, and that value can go to a lot of ways, right? It can be an increase in ROI, it can be user satisfaction, it can be risk
Yeah.
reduction. There's a lot of motivators,
Yep.
and not one is better than the other. It just depends on what your goals are. But you have to be able to understand and quantify and be real about where the value is. And if you can't explain that value in 30 seconds, you don't understand it yet. I think
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
as product folks, the test I used to do. So my mother was an elementary school teacher for a long time, and I would always push my product managers, like, if you can't explain this feature and the value to my mother, who knows nothing about software, she's an elementary
Oh,
school
the
teacher.
mom
You
test.
the mom test, you got to explain it. If you can't give me the 30-second Trudy pitch, you don't understand it yet.
Yeah.
And yes, I know you need to go write out 20 requirements, but before that, can you give the 30-second pitch that any layman would understand why we're even talking about this? And
And I think it changes your teams from being ticket takers to actually being problem solvers, right?
100%. It makes you think about it in a broader sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we can, especially now, we can use AI to write tickets, right? I don't.
Yeah. Totally.
don't
Yeah.
yeah,
And
we
probably
don't.
better acceptance criteria that I would have come up with. Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely, absolutely. So the value is, can I articulate? Do I understand? And to the other part of your question, I, the users are important, and that, nothing against that, but absolutely not. They are certainly not the only input. I'll tell you what I've been wrestling with lately, George, is the difference between buyers and users. And that can be the same, right? It's not always different, but in most enterprise softwares, those are very different user profiles. And
Distinctly different.
yeah, I'm
We
sure you
mostly
guys
build
deal with
enterprise
this a
software,
lot.
so I
Mm,
totally get that. It can be frustrating at times because, again, it's the stakeholder needs to be happy about what they're purchasing, but the user needs to be ecstatic to the point where if you took it away from them, they would be begging to have it back.
yes. Yes, and you can't scrap on either of them, right? I mean, the
Right.
answer is always both. You have to
Yeah.
care about both. And I've seen, and you probably have too, but if you lean too far one way, it's going to end up causing you problems. And I've
Yep.
definitely seen it. I've
Yep.
seen it where we put too much focus on the buyer. That this was not at Bungee, but where we focused on decks, we focused on positioning. All that's important. That's all
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
but we
Has a
under
place.
focused on the user.
Yeah.
And then I've seen it the other way where we put a lot of focus on the end user. They're happy, they think it's efficient, but it doesn't matter because we can't sell anything because we forgot how to position it to the buyer. And so even that, that question of like the consumer or the customer is like, I think understanding that dichotomy between the buyers and the users when it exists, it doesn't
Yep.
always, but when it
Yep.
exists is really important for us product folks to be able to understand and articulate.
It's really good. It's really good. I'm immediately casting myself back to Crema's participation in that. And we kind of have a third, maybe even fourth group, which is we're having to solve those. We're trying to help solve those problems with our companies, right? They're our clients, the
Right,
people that we're
right,
working
right.
with. But also we have to make the company that is hiring us happy. And so there's this like weird like third leg that it's like, oh yeah, that's right. As much
Gosh.
as I want to get straight to your end user because that's what we're here to do is design and build software that's going to make them happy, I also have to make you happy, and I
Mm,
have to make the customer buyer that you have happy. So it is you're always, and I think that's the product's role
mm,
is to be seeing. I use this analogy of like a constellation that when you look at the stars at night, it's just dots in the sky.
mm,
But if you can start to actually draw lines between those dots, you can actually make, characters,
mm,
shapes, gods, even to some people.
mm,
And you go, oh, no, these things have meaning. These things have importance. That each of the dot has a place. And if you take one of those dots out, it's no longer Orion, right? It doesn't have the shape anymore.
mm.
And so I think about that as a product's role is to see the dots and start to go, no, this is has meaning, and all of these things are connected for a purpose.
Man,
It's
I'm
hard
a
though.
sucker for a good analogy. I love that one. That's good.
Hey,
So,
take it, run
so
with it.
yeah, I might reuse that. I'll try to give you credit if I think of
Yeah,
it. But
that's all
yeah,
good. It's all good.
yeah, it's similar to the hub, right? It is like you if
Yeah.
you're yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Is you kind of cast the vision and bring it all together.
I'm curious as we round out here. Your story has been, and I think what I really appreciate is just your intentionality, both to understanding and aligning people, your empathy, and understanding that this is a relational role,
Mm,
right? Like you have to
mm,
build trust. You said that earlier. You have to build trust, and it is a trope, but it's so true. I just put something on LinkedIn the other day, yesterday, that was about this, and it was, and even at the bottom, if anybody reads to the bottom of my LinkedIn post, who knows? It says something like, you all are probably going like, duh, George, of course it's trust this and whatever. But the reality is, like you said, it's really a hard thing to do to
right.
earn
Yeah.
trust. And people take it for granted that it's just built into the system, and it's not. I
Right.
love Reed
100%.
Hoffman's definition of trust is consistency over time.
Hmm.
So you have to deliver over and over and over again before it actually becomes something where I'm like, I'm depending on you and I know that you will deliver.
Yep.
Um,
100%.
and that's a tough one to nail. So I guess to that point, as you think about trust, as you think about the relationships, and as you think about being at both the large companies that are going through M&As and private equity and everything else, and now the small companies where you're wearing multiple
Mm.
hats, out of all those things, where are the areas that you go, here's just consistently where people think they're doing good, or they think they're heading towards the right direction, or they're doing the right thing, but they just get it wrong, right?
Mm.
And it's just something you see over and over and again. You're like, yeah, I know why you're doing that, but please don't. Like, what's the first thing that pops into your mind when I say that? Of the, I wish they didn't always do this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, three popped in my head immediately. And it is such a great question. I think, and the first two are not going to be any surprise. So one is chasing the squeaky wheel,
Oh
right? I
yeah,
mean, it's a
yeah,
prioritization question, but as thinking about less about where I am with Bungie now, but especially when I would talk to those new companies of acquisitions. And again, I was very fortunate to have about 20 of those opportunities. And you probably see it too at Crema is like,
yeah.
you get in, it's okay. Now tell me why that's the biggest thing in your roadmap. It's like, well, because sales keeps asking for it, because this client keeps asking for it. It's like, Okay, that is an answer, but it's not a good reason.
Yeah.
And not that the squeaky wheel is always wrong. Sometimes that's the right answer, but it's not just because they've asked the most times or they're making the most noise. So I know that's basic, but it's like trust. Just because it's basic doesn't mean it's true. And I really think
Yeah.
that one is,
Yeah.
and it's the one I saw the most, frankly. I mean, of the opportunities I've had to speak with companies, that is probably the one I see the most. The next one, again, no shocker, but the shiny object. So
Yeah.
it's like, man, and right now AI is sucking everybody in, right? It's the it's the shiniest object everywhere. And again, there's nothing wrong with AI. AI is the future. There's no doubt about it.
It's definitely going to stick around. It's not going away. Yeah, 100%.
Ain't going anywhere. But if so, I think with the shiny object, it the to drill in one step further, it's not having a great understanding of what value you're trying to achieve with the shiny object, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
take AI, like AI is great, but if you're just chasing AI, you don't know where you're going. Now if you've got a use case for, hey, there's this value to be added and AI is the way to get it, great. That's a use case that's worth pursuing. But to chase something just because it's shiny, I think that's another, again, that's probably the second thing I saw. And the third one that jumped into my mind was I call it incongruency, and we've talked about it a little bit, but between
Mm,
different parts of the company, between corporate goals and product goals, between leadership, between employees, between engineering and product, but having incongruency about things is another easy pitfall. So again, a long answer, I apologize, but like those
no, it's
three I
really
think are
good.
so consistently seen, and it's kind of one of those like everybody talks about these, and so having tactical ways to tackle them becomes the key because they're real. They're real
They are
challenges.
real. Yeah, they're 100% real. And I think all of those I would refer to almost as distractions, right?
Mm,
So
mm-hmm.
it is the I'm distracted by what matters to me. I'm distracted by what seems to be hype right now or novelty. I'm distracted by what is annoying me, which is this annoying user or customer that honestly, I'd probably be better off if they were just not a customer anymore and I could go on and serve the rest
Right.
of them better, Um,
100%.
I think Crema's dealt with that too, right? We've had
Mm-hmm.
customers where I'm like, man, we are putting all of our effort into saving this client that is not a good client.
Yeah. What if we
you
just let
know,
them go?
yeah, we should just let them go and move on. And sometimes we did. And so I think that that's really good because it's very hard to figure out. I think as humans in general, and add technology to it, and add modern life to it, and we're distracted by everything and anything. And I think what you're describing is that ability to go, what matters and where should I focus?
Mm,
And ultimately, how do I get people to focus as a group and not just as individuals? So that goes back to our alignment, which is full circle.
yes. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great. It's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question. What you can say AI if you want to, but what is something? It's fine, but let's have a good use case for it if you do say that.
Yep.
Um, what's something that right now, looking forward, it's been a weird couple years, right, in
Mm,
technology. I mean, we're seeing layoffs, we're seeing shifts in organizations, we're seeing AI replacing technology or developers, maybe product one day. I'm curious though. I always like ending on a high note. What's something you're excited about? What's something
mm.
that positively you're looking forward? It could be in the way that your business is approaching something, or way that you're seeing the future of your role or the future of your team. What's something that first thing that you think of when you think I'm excited about this coming down ahead of us?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. Love it. So I'll give you two sides. One for Bungee because it's been exciting and we're at an exciting point in growth for us. We're right near the profitability stage, and so from
Come
a
on,
company
that's
perspective,
huge.
I know
Yeah.
super exciting. I one thing I really respect about our founders is we've stayed really true to staying in our niche but growing in that, which is tough, right? Because you
Hmm.
can get outside your niche easy, or you can limit your growth easy, and we've done a really good job, I think, of knowing who we are but growing within that. And so it's fun to do that. I feel like grow in a good way and then find profitability, which I do think we'll do this year. So for the company, that's a big
That's
note.
huge.
And
That is worth being excited about. Yep.
thank you. Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. And the one, okay, I was kind of naysaying AI, so I'm going to give you. This is just from actually earlier this morning. I had to call my bank. Okay, and so here's my answer is companies and technologists finding real value use cases for AI. So I know it's kind of
Practical, valuable use cases.
practical value use case because I
Yeah.
was naysaying AI and I think it's very distracting right now. But seeing companies find real applications for it is super exciting. And I have a half a dozen for Bungii that I'm excited about, but I'll give you one that's like super timely. So I had to call my bank this morning and the guy's like, "Hey, do you mind if we set up like voice security?" And I'm like, "Well, what all does that entail?" You know, as a tech guy, I always just interested in what they're doing. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Nothing. I just turn on this recorder. It's going to record your voice, and then when we're done, the next time you call in, it'll know your voice and you don't have to have a code or anything." And so without me as a user having to do a thing other than give permission,
Mm.
they set a recorder that can use AI to recognize my voice and then apply it as a security function to make my life easier every time I call in. And this is a bank who, you know, let's
It's a big
stereotype a
deal.
little bit. They're slow moving, behind the
Yeah.
times. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was a really cool AI application. It made my life easier. It made my account more secure. And so I use that example only because I think as technologists and product folks, that's like the charge to us is how do we take AI, like we said, it ain't going away, it's here to
Hmm.
stay, and it has
Yep.
tons of great value potential. But how do we apply it to our business to make
Yeah.
our business grow, our users' lives easier, our buyers more happy? I do think that's, you know, not to just tout AI, but that is what is exciting is we can rally around finding the value for our niches. It's really cool.
I'm excited to get past this phase in AI where we're at right now, if this kind of hype of everybody throwing out agentic
Mm,
and LLM and smarter models and foundation. I'm glad there's competition in the foundational models. I just didn't like a nerd point, but also just like I'm ready for it to start landing on, okay, now here's people that are actually doing useful things rather than just making the smarter thing smarter for the sake of being smarter.
yes,
And
100
I'm
percent.
100% with you. I mean, the area that Crema's using it the most in experimenting, of course, we use it for like debugging and things like that within code, but is rapid prototyping.
Mm,
It's getting really exciting what I used to have to do in Figma by designing out a bunch of screens, you know, clicking them together. That already saved months worth of development work, validating and testing ideas.
mm,
Now, but it was not fully real. It looked
yep.
good, but it wasn't fully real. Now we're going, I can do some prompt engineering with some of these low code builders. They're not low code. It's actually writing React, but I can rapid prototype solutions that are real and a user can come in and actually interact with it. Now, I would never put that code into production, not yet. It's not quite ready for that. But it allows me to serve my clients way faster and way better,
Mm.
which is
Isn't
super
that
exciting.
crazy? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is, and I could view it as a threat, right? Because you could say, well, it's writing code that replaces the demand, demand for what Chroma offers. But in the end of the day, it's like, no, this is a way for us to actually get to the right answer faster.
Mm, man,
So
that's such an important point too of how like embracing it, right? But embracing it too, because it's one of those things that feels like we're talking about with acquisition. It feels threatening. It's like, well, it's basically robots doing my job. It's like, you know,
yeah,
or,
right.
but it is, you got to flip it around and it's like, okay, but how can I make it just, it makes our jobs bigger and more important if we'll let it.
That's
And,
right.
but it does, I love the use case you described because it's, yeah, it can make that so much more rapid and more accurate too. And then it flips the role a little bit to people using it. And really it's going to make it
Yeah.
more strategic if we will let it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. As much as I kind of eye roll a lot when I hear it brought up again, there is it's going to help us. Okay. Well, I want to wrap up there. This has been really just a fun conversation talking about kind of your journey into the world of product. Which I always loving hearing that story because people come from all different backgrounds
Mm,
getting into this space where you start connecting the dots. And then second, I love the fact that you lead with principles. So,
mm,
there's one thing to lead with like a defined process book that you've all read a Medium article or something that said this is the way you ought to do it. And in reality, I think what I hear from you is that you're very principles driven
mm,
in the way that you approach interacting with people, leadership, users, stakeholders, et cetera, and your teams. And that it sounds like you care about your people, which
mm.
I think goes to say that's a great product person, leader, manager, whatever it is. And, you know, we're both going through a midlife crisis, so it's all good.
All fair, all accurate, Jordan. Good summary.
All good things. Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for what you do and how you do it. And then also I want to roll out the red carpet for you. Where can people learn more about you or get connected with you to stay in touch and maybe pick your brain a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So from a company perspective, so Bungii, Bungii.com. That is it. Kansas City company doing great and fun stuff.
Check
Would
it out.
love to
It's
have you
super cool.
check it out. Cool
Yeah.
company. Like we said, locally founded, local headquarters here. A lot of good stuff. Personally, LinkedIn is great. I mean, that's where, you know, you can find me there, Mark Vanderweide. Would love to connect, talk more about all of these things. We don't just have to talk about AI. We can talk about your midlife crisis too, if you want.
I love it. I love it. The real thing. And break
The real
bread.
stuff.
That's the idea. We get
Absolutely.
ultimately we'll find a reason to break bread.
You
Awesome.
got it.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it, George. Thank you.
People of Product is brought to you by Crema, a design consultancy that helps forward-thinking leaders discover, understand, and execute on their greatest opportunities. Learn more at crema.us.